I've spanked people with ludicrous things. I've spanked someone with a fire hose. I've spanked someone with a ceiling fan. I've spanked someone with boat oars.
Welcome to Profoundly Pointless. My name is Nick. In this episode, we're going to look at the world of professional discipline. Our guest is a professional disciplinarian and the headmistress of Spanking University, Miss Kelley May. Thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe if you get a chance. Were you always drawn to this, or did that kind of happen later on?
No, so I've always been interested in spanking, specifically in my fetish. So you'll find that's very typical of people that identify as fetishists. So people that have a specific interest. A lot of us remember thinking about it and being interested in it in childhood, as early as like 5 years old. At that point, you don't know what it is, right? You don't think, oh, I have this sexual interest. You're just like, oh, I'm like interested in this. We talk about looking it up in the dictionary a lot. So being like a dictionary kid, like you'd look up the word spanking in the dictionary and all the sort of associated words. If it came on a cartoon or in a book you were reading, you'd kind of feel like, and there's this association of a feeling like, I'm not supposed to tell anybody about this. And I don't think that I'm supposed to be interested in this, but I am. And then kind of as you grow older and you hit puberty, you start like, you're like, oh, okay, connecting some dots here. There are some people that will come to this later in life, but I'd say for people that are what we call like an obligatory fetishist or an exclusive fetishist, somebody who like their fetish is their whole sexuality, often and usually will have noticed it in childhood. Not necessarily because of a trauma or anything like that. I was not spanked as a kid. You'll find that statistically speaking, it's about the normal average of whether people were or weren't spanked as a kid.
So, like, you were drawn to it even before you were kind of sexually attracted to the idea of sex. Like, it was this thing, and then.
So I'm not interested in sex, and I have never been interested in sex. So, but I understand in the sense of like, it is pre-sexual. Yes, it is a interest that precedes like a sexual awakening. But I have no interest in vanilla sex, what I would consider or call vanilla sex, right? Sex that doesn't contain spanking or any sort of kink. To a lot of people, when they hear about fetishes or kinks or BDSM or spanking or all these things, they kind of assume that it's like dessert, right? Or an appetizer, right? And it's the whole meal.
You're not interested in just missionary, hey, I got 5 minutes, let's do this. Like, this is the whole thing.
Yes. So that like missionary sort of sex, like that has zero interest, 0 out of 10. I think a friend of mine who also does like spanking discussions and education work, the way she talks about it is like, what is the thing you think about when you masturbate? Right? Like, and most people think about sex in some capacity, right? I don't think about sex at all. I have never thought about sex and masturbating. It's always been spanking, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. What is it about it?
That's a question for the ages, right? So it's everything. So it's the details. It's the nuance. The way I describe spanking is being made up of 4 components specifically. So they are discipline, power, pain, and humiliation. And some combination of those things via spanking is the interest. And whether so when I was younger, it was very discipline driven. I was really into the idea of like being in trouble and being punished. I had very toxic love with the idea of discipline and being fixed, of rescuing and someone being saving me. And then sometimes I'll be really into the idea of somebody else just being in control. As a top, I love humiliation. I like being in control as well. And then there's the aspect of this hurts. This has a physical sensation to it, right? There's a masochism, sadism element to it. But what it is that I like about it is an odd question in the sense of it's everything about it. I can't imagine not being interested in it. So therefore, like individual aspects of it aren't more appealing than others.
I like all of it, not necessarily one single aspect of it. Now, do people seem to assume one role generally? Like I'm either the spanker or the spankee, or do people
Yeah.
kind of go back?
No, that's a good question. Sorry, I forgot you said you didn't have any background knowledge, and that's totally fine. So you're typically one of three orientations. So you're either a bottom, which is the person getting spanked, you're the top, or the person doing the spanking, or you're a switch, which is what I am, which means you do either role and you like both roles. So I often think a lot of fetishists are switches because in some ways I just love the act. I love the thing itself in some ways more than I love my orientation to it. This is going to sound really wild. So, like, male platonic discipline spanking is my favorite. Like, that is the mwah, that is the chef's kiss, my favorite thing. I am not involved in that scene even a little bit. Like, I have no interest in it, but I love it desperately because I love it is a perfect representation of spanking in my fetish. But then, for example, my husband is a top and he's only a top. And then plenty of people are bottoms and only bottoms. So I just want to be involved. I just like it. And so I sometimes say I'm a bisexual switch. I'm not indecisive. I'm greedy. I just want to do all of the things.
Just want to do everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. I'm down for
I'm
it.
in. I'm here for it.
Now, is that okay? Do men and women, do they tend to assume traditional a certain role? Like usually a man is this, usually a woman is this. Like does it fall along those kind of lines?
You will find more male tops and more female bottoms. Those are if someone is just a top, it is almost always a male. And if someone is just a bottom, it is often a woman. But there are lots of male bottoms. There are fewer female tops. There's a lot of female switches, though. There's a discussion going on in our community right now about how women, especially as they age, are more valued by our community as switches than they are as just bottoms. So there's a bit of an incentive for women to start topping as they get older. And there still is some stereotyping against male bottoming, right? So there is still, unfortunately, a bit of stigma. So guys that will top, like they primarily top, but even if they really wanted to bottom, they might not ever do it because sometimes there can be the association of like, oh, well, you're not a real top then.
Oh yeah, like you can't do it at all. You gotta.
Yeah, it's a very kind of like gross misogyny of this idea of like the alpha male and like the submissive female. And if the alpha male were to submit in some capacity to someone, then he would no longer be the alpha.
When do you go from like, I'm married, my wife and I, like, give her a little pat on the bottom, but when does going from a pat on the bottom to like spanking to like, whoa, that's some spanking? Like how does this progress?
That's a great question. So I'd say you're sort of like typical average, like beginner spanking would be with a hand over someone's knee, like on a sofa or in a chair, and probably on bare bottom, so without clothes, and go for a minute or two, like a couple minutes, to the point that the bottom would be feeling kind of like squirming and in pain, but not so much pain that they're trying to get away, if that makes sense. The phrase, it's a spanking, it's supposed to hurt, right? Like that always is gonna apply. But you can definitely do spanking at a level of just casual, playful, not taking very long, and just kind of you end up with a nice warm rosy feeling and you're happy and gone, to like I can beat someone with a strap for an hour. So like I could take a belt to somebody for like an hour. So there's a huge range in the middle, and it all depends on kind of what you're going for. Some of the time, if you're going for a role play, right? If you're going for a discipline scene, if you're going for the idea of like you've been naughty and you're going to get punished, you kind of do the spanking as it fits the scene in a way, right? So like it wouldn't make sense if I'm scolding somebody, say for like, if I'm pretending to be a professor and scolding somebody for not turning in an assignment, it's not going to make a lot of sense for me to bust out like 5 paddles and 2 straps and a cane and like go for an hour spanking them. It'll make more sense for me to do like a contained scene that takes 5-10 minutes, right? Maybe 15-20 minutes if you include all the scolding and the before. But if what somebody's going for is one of the things you can try to get, which is a very BDSM concept rather than a spanking concept, of subspace and endorphins. Basically, like when you're in pain, your body floods your brain with endorphins. It's what happens when you run. Like when people get runner's high, it's just your body being like, hi, have some endorphins. You're doing something very silly. And so you can like create that feeling, in which case that'll be like a longer scene. In reality, a spanking scene is primarily not the spanking. It's the scolding, the lead up, the rituals of all the things, and then a bit of the like aftercare and the comfort and the cuddles and the forgiveness. And the spanking can sometimes take up very little of it, like the physical action, or it can take up a ton of it. Did that make any sense?
It does. It's the whole situation, right? It's you're going to get spanked. I'm about to do it. You're in trouble. Here it comes. Did you learn your lesson? Right? I kind of get that whole...
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's where a lot of times people that aren't into spanking or aren't into any fetish, right? It's those details that people that are like obsessed. In some way, people that have a hobby, and then you meet somebody that like has like an obsession with this hobby, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm into, I don't know, Pokemon or something. And then somebody's like, oh, do you know about this like 3rd generation with like card that only you can get, like, you know what I mean? Where it's like really, really detailed. And so fetishists are like that about okay, you're going to come into the room. I'm going to be sitting here, and then I'm going to confront you and I'm going to ask you questions like, where were you? Where have you been? And you're going to come over here and I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to look at you and be like, that's unacceptable behavior. And I'm going to lecture you about it. Then I'm going to stand you up. And then I'm going to have you I'm going to take down your jeans, or I'm going to make you take down your jeans, or like those details are what keep us up at night.
You're acting out a fantasy.
Yeah. So for a role play, a lot of times it's like acting out a fantasy. Most spankos, or a lot of spankos, you'll find are really into the idea of real discipline, of domestic discipline, of being spanked for real life things and being punished for real life things. I have very complicated feelings about this. That is my fetish as well. Like I have that core interest. I'm not convinced it's like good for anybody or good for us. But in which case you're going through the idea of like, I have done something wrong and someone is going to hold me accountable for the thing that I have done wrong and punish me for it.
That would be the one question that I would have, right? And maybe this comes from my kind of a more traditional background. Is a sense that, let's say you're like married with kids, right? Like, how do you go from doing that to like, all right, we got to go pick up the kids at school? Like, can people have that kind of turn it on, turn it off? Air quotes, normal life?
Yeah.
Or is this like, no, you're in it and this is the core of your relationship?
That's a really good question. So I find that in practice, most people turn it on and turn it off eventually. So the fantasy is that you live it 24/7. And in the beginning, you can. When you're at the beginning of your relationship and everything is new and shiny and you have that new relationship energy that everybody gets, right? Everybody gets in a new relationship. It's just like the honeymoon phase, right? Where you have sex all the time. And then vanilla people don't, you're not just going to like go have sex on a random Tuesday at 3 p.m. because you got to go pick up the kids, right? It can have that sort of element to it. And discipline is one of the ways that this falls apart in real life, because in fantasy, a top is perfect. In the fantasy, the top never messes up. in the fantasy, the top is infallible. And in real life, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can be hard if you're like, oh, I'm in trouble for doing this, but I'm kind of annoyed at you because you didn't take out the trash yesterday and you said you were going to take out the trash, and like,
it ruins it.
It
ruins it. It affects it.
It affects it. Exactly. It affects it. And so spanking can end up with people that are in long-term relationships and committed relationships, people that have families, things like that. It can kind of become more of that fantasy or role play or one-off thing, the way sex is for most people in a married couple, right? It's like, ooh, we have a weekend away. Like, let's go do the thing. So it becomes more like that. Whereas there are people that, if they're single or they live their life, will try to live 24/7. But I find the people that typically say that they live 24/7 either don't or don't actually live with their partner 24/7. That they'll be long distance.
Yeah, that would be a hard thing. And I'll speak from my personal, I couldn't imagine putting my wife over my knee for an hour and then being like, all right, we got to go do the grocery shopping. I wouldn't know how that would, that would work.
In those situations, it would usually be more of a 2-minute sort of situation, right? So that I've done with my husband where it's like, oh, I want a spanking and we've got 20 minutes. I can get a few smacks and feel like, oh, that felt nice. I feel happy. We had a little bit of connection and a little bit of something quick and fun. And then we can go get groceries. But yeah, no, we don't have the big elaborate role plays that we used to do when we first got together, where, we'd text about it for a week and then be like, okay, so you're going to be an American Revolutionary Guardsman and I'm going to be, and you have this really elaborate thing. And now it's like, hey, can you give me a spanking? And he's like, yeah, that sounds nice. Or it's like, oh, I put on a pretty dress. And it's like, So in some ways, we're just like vanillas. It's just like sex in that sense.
Right. Everything becomes normalized after a certain amount of time. But then I would imagine that this is a thing that can go too far.
Yes. So explain what you mean by that.
Somebody getting hurt.
The nice thing about spanking compared to other BDSM things is it's not particularly dangerous, right? So rope, bondage, which is a really common thing for people to kind of casually try out as they're dabbling into kinkiness, is actually wildly dangerous. And people just think it's really entry level, and it's actually deeply, deeply not. Spanking, on the other hand, is pretty entry level because especially if you're using your hand, it hurts your hand. So it's actually difficult to hit someone harder, hard enough to cause them damage that wouldn't also cause you damage.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? You can only do it so hard.
Right. But if you start using implements, you can definitely cause injury. And I think that there comes up to a level of so we call it risk-aware consensual kink, RAC. It's this idea that all kink and all fetish work, all things like this that involve pain and are inherently risky. I'm asking somebody to hurt me, but just right. I want you to hurt me exactly the way I want you to hurt me, but I can't really tell you what that is. I just kind of need you to know it. And learning those communication skills of how to articulate what it is that you want from a scene versus what it is that you don't. We talk about limits a lot in spanking, and in kink in general, you'll say, so I have a limit against this implement and this implement or this type of scene. I have a limit about broken skin. I don't play as a bottom on broken skin. I don't like bruises either. Some people don't have those limits, right? So coming to terms with whatever it is that you are willing to do and how much risk you are willing to take, and understanding what the risks are that are inherent. Like I said, spanking is relatively low risk as far as BDSM goes, right? But a caning, which is a very traditional British form of spanking, with a rod, a cane, is much higher risk. You could do some damage, like you were saying. You could hurt someone with that, right? And so knowing what those risks are, so that you're able to consent to them or not, is, as a bottom, is really important. And as a top, it's just critical that people learn how to do stuff properly. there's a lot of technique to it, and being technically competent is a thing. Something I really value.
Where would you say on the level of like 1 being like, oh, light pat on the bottom, like 10, I'm getting a running start with a hockey stick and whacking, right? Like where would you say that most people are on that kind of level? Like when somebody is interested in this and enjoys this, how far do they usually go?
Like a 5. Like I'd say most people play. So that's actually a really good question. And I actually ask people this when I use a 0 to 10 scale of how much something hurts. And I usually people want to stay between like 4 and 6. If I want to push someone, if they want a punishment scene, if they want to feel like something really hurt, I might briefly take it up to like a 7 or an 8, right? And kind of like push them into a spot where it's like, I'm uncomfortable, this hurts, I don't like it, and then pull them back down. But there are people who are like, no, take a running start and like hit me with a 2x4.
Seems like it really hurt.
It does. Go for it. I mean, some of it is about pain tolerance, right? So some of it is personal, like how much pain can you take and how well do you process pain? And then some of it is just like interest, right? So if somebody is really obsessed with paddles and hard paddlings, that's going to be what you're going to do, even if you have a low pain tolerance. But somebody who has a high pain tolerance but doesn't like the idea of implements at all will just not use them. So does that make any sense? I'd say the majority of people are in the middle, where it's like most people like a hard hand spanking and the occasional hairbrush or belt.
Okay, this may be a little bit personal, right?
Go
so
for
then
it.
after you do a spanking, right? Well, then do you then have sex afterwards, or is there's no sex involved in this at all?
For the most part, there is no sex involved in this at all. That is not true for everybody. So there are spankos who like to have sex after, or do sexy things, you know, even if it's not traditional sex, to do sex things after. I have sometimes enjoyed doing sexy times after spanking. But typically, like a traditional quote unquote spanking scene is like build up spanking and then what we call aftercare. Because you are full of endorphins and you're full of floaty feels, and hypothetically scenes can get very emotional if they have to do with forgiveness or shame or guilt, and people can cry. There's a lot of pain, and so then comforting somebody and holding somebody and letting them come down through that space and connecting in that moment is a really important part of a scene. So usually intense scenes will end in that and not in sex, but it can end in sex.
So if it doesn't though, then is it sexual? Because to me that kind of sounds like ordering a meal and not eating it.
That's
right?
a great question. Yeah. So whether or not spanking is sexual is a hotly contested debate in the spanking community. I am firmly on the stance that it is, because I'm not interested in vanilla sex. There's a phrase used kind of to describe sex in non-PIV situations, right? So when you don't just have a man and a woman having sex, what is sex? What is 2 women having sex look like, right? That sort of question. And the idea is it's the farthest you could go with any individual person. Like the most you could do with someone, the most you would be willing to do, right? And so if sex is off the table for me because sex is not of interest to me, the only thing that I'm interested in doing is spanking. So doing a spanking scene with someone is inherently sexual, but it's not inherently, okay, this is going to get really in the weeds, so tell me if this is like too weedy.
It kind of sounds like it changes your definition of sex.
Oh,
like maybe you don't have sex, but this is sex for you.
Yes. So this is sex for me, and certain types of spanking are more intimate than others for me personally. So discipline scenes are deeply, deeply intimate for me. And age play scenes, so scenes where like my partner is my husband is older than me and I call him daddy sometimes. So like those sorts of scenes with that sort of intimacy are very impactful for me. So those are scenes that say like, I won't share with other people. So I'm not comfortable with him doing with other people, and I don't do them with other people, because that is the thing that I consider to be like sex. That is the farthest, quote unquote, that I will go. That is the most intimate that I get. And then if I just were to give someone like a playful spanking or to receive a playful spanking, it's still sexual the way that like making out with someone is sexual, or touching someone's boob is sexual, but it's not sex.
So how popular would you say that this is?
Pretty popular. So spanking is one of the most common fetishes. So your most common fetishes are going to be bondage, spanking, feet usually, and any form of sort of like humiliation.
That's like, would it be above feet? Because when I think of like, okay, fetishes that I've heard about, and
oh, it's above feet.
Like up there. It's above feet.
It's above feet. Well, feet is complicated because feet can encompass like is actually a lot of things. So I don't have a foot fetish. I don't understand foot fetishes, but I know about them, right? So there's like, you can have an interest in the actual foot. You can have an interest in like the feet crushing things. You can have an interest in like sucking on the, like there are very specific interests within feet, if that makes sense. So probably spanking is probably about as big as like the whole foot umbrella, but it's definitely bigger than any individual one. Spanking is also wildly well organized, so we sometimes feel very big as a result. There's a lot of people, and a lot of people who are otherwise kinky, who are into feet or humiliation or pain or sadism or bondage, will also be into spanking. They just won't be into spanking the same way that someone like me is. So the level, if in terms of people
levels
that are in
to this,
there's optional, preferred, and obligatory. You can be interested in something as just like a general interest that's non-sexual, or it's a non-normative thing that you're into, but it's optional. Or you can be into a non-normative thing and you prefer to do it, or you can be into a non-normative thing and like have to do it. So a lot of people like spanking somewhere along that line. The number of us that are like obligatory spanking fetishes, I don't know, I'd probably say we're like top 5
would be right there.
But discipline, like spanking overlaps with the discipline a lot. This idea of like you're in trouble and you're going to get punished. That element is really compelling and very popular to a lot of people. And spanking just works really well with that. So a lot of people kind of end up in spanking because of that.
Is it more women than men?
I actually think it's one of my favorite things about fetishism is that it's like a genuine cross-section of humanity. There are no specific types of people that are more or less likely to be into something. There are specific types of people that are more or less likely to get involved or to engage with their fetish. But you will find, like one of the events I run, we had like 500 people at an event, and it was age 18 to 83 from 7 different countries, 50-50 gender split. And I think we had people from 39 states. And it was just like all the different political beliefs, all of the different financial situations, all of the different life situations. And the only thing we all have in common is this stupid fucking interest that we're all over here.
Everybody wants to spank somebody, right?
Yeah, we're all just over here being like, hi. How do you feel about the movie Blue Hawaii?
Do people, though, within it, I'm going to use this word very loosely.
Yeah,
do people within it view it as odd?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I think we all know that we're weird. Yeah, so the answer is definitely yes. Like, you grow up with a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame and there's a lot of embarrassment. I am the oddest person to talk. I'm the weirdest person to talk to about this question because I have the least amount of shame about my fetish of anyone that I know. I very early on, like I said, I got the internet and I came to terms with the fact that like, this is what it is and this is who I am. It's not going away. And so I'm going to go with it. I still did have the feelings of like, don't tell anybody. You can't tell anybody. This has to be a secret. I'm very out. So like I'm doing this interview, I'm out to my family. I was out in work and school contexts. But almost no one else is. Like everybody else has a feeling of like, this is a thing that I'm supposed to hide, which I don't like. And it makes me very sad. But it is a situation where like, I do know people that have been outed and have been fired from their jobs because someone found out that they were into this. So, you do run risks. So we all are over here knowing that other people think we're weird. And the people that come to events and get involved are the people that have come the most to terms with it and are the most okay with themselves and kind of being like, we're all freaks. We're just freaks together.
Yeah, you have a commonality. So, okay, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have a university. So is there a correct way to spank? Like, what's the correct way to do it?
There's no one correct way. I would say there's lots of wrong ways. But I have a YouTube channel called Spanking University where I do a lot of like practical things. YouTube doesn't like when I do like actual literal practicalities. But I can talk about them. But no, there are ways to basically make it so, like you were saying, are people at risk of getting hurt? It's a nice thing about a butt. Doesn't have any major organs in it. Doesn't have any. It's really well designed to take smacks. And so if you are using implements and using techniques correctly, you will not hurt somebody any more than they want to be hurt. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. Yeah.
And if you're just guessing and throwing things at people, it's going to go real poorly. But I mean, a lot of people do spanking wrong. So like even people that are experienced BDSM and like kinky people, you'll see them I'll see them using techniques that I'm like, it's not a great spanking technique. Partially because spanking does have this rootedness in punishment and this rootedness of like a traditional punishment thing, that there are elements where it's like, if it's not at least kind of making a nod towards that, of like someone is over a knee getting spanked, you're spanking someone with your hand like this, right? Like you're going down. If somebody is like spanking like this with like a butt in front of them and the tops of your fingers are going to hit on their lower back, like that's not spanking, that's just smacking someone's ass. Totally valid. Asses are great. Smacking ass is great. It's just not a spanking. If that makes sense.
It did until I thought about it. And then I don't like, wait a minute, what now?
Okay. So a spanking is typically like let's just talk about hands, right? So it's like a hand hitting a butt for the purposes, hypothetically, of like punishing or like creating redness of something stinging and hurting. Usually you are perpendicular to the butt. So like someone would be laying across me like this, and I would be spanking like this. So like their butt is here and I'm going down like this.
You're coming down on it at
like an angle. I'm coming down at an angle, yeah. And my hand is like sideways to their butt. If they're in front of me, like if someone is like, okay, so if you're having sex, like doggy style, right? And somebody just like smacks somebody on the ass, it drives me nuts. There is no way you are hitting ass cheek. Like that is mostly hip, right? That is mostly like the tips of your fingers are mostly like on the hip. And for it to be spanking, it needs to be like, you need to be getting the meaty bit.
So does it make it more or less enjoyable depending on the size of someone's butt?
It depends. I find all butts equally enjoyable. But like the amount of space that you can spank does like change. It can make things harder or easier.
Can you look at someone and be like, oh, that's a good spanking butt?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody has their own preferences. I should say this. Like, and those preferences run the gamut inside of the spanking world, just like they do outside of the spanking world. I like a butt that has a little bit of like something on it.
It's got to have some muscle and some
jiggle. Yeah, it's like the mix.
Jiggle to it.
If it's all muscle, you kind of just feel like you're running your hand into a brick wall, and it's really painful. Yeah, so like My right hand is like literally larger than my left hand, because like the bone density in my right hand is like higher from having like spanked for so long. It's a weird, like if you can tell when people have been like spanking for a really long time, because the hand that they spank with is like usually kind of gnarly.
It's a little bit bigger?
Yeah, very slightly. Like let's see if I can like show you, but like the palm area is like
Oh,
ever so slightly bigger.
yeah.
So it's
That is
just,
interesting.
I am very good at clapping and very good at high fiving.
Are you ready for some harder / listener submitted questions?
Sure, happy.
Best thing to spank someone with, worst thing to spank someone with.
Okay. Best thing. There's a lot of things. I've spanked people with ludicrous things. I've spanked someone with a fire hose. I've spanked someone with a ceiling fan. I've spanked someone with boat oars. Like Spankos, they're called pervertibles. We are really good at it. Best things, a traditional hairbrush or a wooden spoon. Those are like the easiest. They're hard to fuck up or harder to fuck up. And they're very traditional, which I really enjoy both as a top and bottom. There's like a sort of like maternal feeling to them, a very punitive feeling to them. They hurt like heck. Worst thing would be anything that has sharp edges. I have like a very strong feeling about this. Anything with sharp edges, anything that isn't sanded on the sides. So like slotted spoons where they haven't been sanded and they're just like really sharp on the ends that can cut. Anything that can cut is basically a no for me. I also hate leather paddles. I have a personal vendetta against almost all leather paddles. They're usually poorly made. They're usually from sex shops. And they're like, if you get one from a good implement maker, like they can be good, but also they usually don't hurt the bottom at all. And they take so much arm. They're like, the amount of work you have to put in for a leather paddle versus what you get is not there for me. But I am alone in this opinion.
Now, you do requests? I guess I don't know what the phrasing would be here, right? But you do sessions.
Yeah, so I do sessions. So basically, I do like people can apply, and I have like a website, and you submit an application, and I do one-on-one scenes with people. It's like a paid service, so it's not full service. So I don't do traditional sex. So I classify myself as a sex worker as a result, but I am not a sex worker in that I don't do full service sex work. So it depends on how someone wants to classify that, but like I also make porn, so read that how you will. But yeah, so people can apply and have a one-on-one scene with me where I top them and I spank them and I make fantasies come true, as long as they're spanking related. People ask me for other things, and I'm like, there are amazingly qualified dominatrixes out there that I'm sure could do that. I am just not one of them.
That kind of feeds into one of most common requests that you get, most interesting requests that you've had.
So the most common request that I get is for just a really traditional discipline scene, usually mother-son. So that's usually like a very traditional auntie-son, sort of a like role play of like middle school or high school era, like skipping class, getting caught, and getting spanked for it. That's kind of I see both men and women, and in reality, I probably see more women now, but I'd say that over the years, that has been the most often done scene. And what was the other part of the question? The oddest?
I would say most interesting. I don't
most
like to use
interesting. Yeah, not odd. The most, I mean, I've gotten some fascinating requests, but I won't go into all of them or some of them because I don't want people to feel bad for sending me messages. But I'd say the most interesting ones that I get are typically people who are brand new. So I love when I get messages from people that have never been spanked before, but have been thinking about it for a really long time. So like I got a message from somebody, and I ended up having a session with somebody who was 72 years old, who'd been fantasizing about spanking his whole life and had never been spanked. And so we met, and I got to give him his first ever spanking, and it was like a wonderful experience. So those always are really it's always a very fascinating story.
Good for him.
Oh yeah, no, I was like, absolutely, this is amazing. I'm always so proud of people when they are able to like take that first step, because it is really hard and it is really scary. And it's amazing when people take the leap.
Okay, but how did you logistically do it with a boat oar? Like, that's the one, like, I'm always fascinated by logistics and like, where did you get the boat oar? How did you find the room for it? Because
it was outside. So that one was an outside scene, and it was in Florida, and somebody that had like a canoe. And so it was like the boat oar, the canoe. Oh no, I did another boat oar scene with somebody actually in a hotel room. If you should give yourself a lot of space. So the person was like laying down, and then you kind of like measure it out and kind of go like this, and a lot of things like that. The big implements, it's like golf, right? They say let the club do the work, right? It's the let the implement do the work. A boat oar is really heavy. I do not need to swing a boat oar. I can just kind of raise a boat oar and let it fall in a controlled manner onto a butt. And then you kind of ramp it up and ramp it up and ramp it up. Boat oars are really thuddy, so they can be really, really yummy.
That is probably the last listener submitted question is, how much of it is just the sound?
I think sound plays a really important part in spanking, and I prefer certain implements over others because of the sounds that they make. So like I have a hairbrush that I really love. It's beautiful. It's this antique ebony, it's a stunning vintage hairbrush. And everybody loves it because of its aesthetics, and it feels really nice. But it makes the worst noise. It just doesn't give you that like really crisp sound. So I don't like to use it nearly as often. Sound is also a big part of like, my girlfriend has migraines, and so sometimes we've had issues of like she really wants to play and like really needs a scene, and like we really want to connect in that manner. And spanking's loud, and it sometimes is literally too loud for her migraines, and so we can't play because it ends up hurting her head more than it hurts her butt. But yeah, so sound can make a big difference of what people like. Sound is also a big part of the anticipation of things. I love doing scenes if I play with multiple people at the same time, having somebody not watch but have to listen, like hear it from the other room. The anticipation that can gen up the fear, the sort of like, oh, what's coming? Oh my gosh, it's gonna hurt. Hearing the reactions and the cries and the sound is really, really powerful.
Like waiting outside the principal's office.
Exactly. Yes, and that's usually the scene.
Or something like that. It is, right?
Yeah. So I run like a massive detention scene at one of my events where it's like, I run one that's fun and funny, and one that I'm like, this actually seems like a miserable thing, where it's called Saturday School, and I make people sit there and do like write essays and do SAT homework. And one at a time, they get pulled out, they get their name called and taken into another room where then they're spanked. And everybody is sitting in this room doing essays silently, and the door's closed, but you can still hear them getting spanked, and then they come back in.
I bet that drives people wild.
It does.
Right?
People really like this idea. Yeah, it's a really good event.
I'm not even into this, but that sounds like, I bet, like for people who are into that, like I bet they love that.
Yeah, it's
like,
that.
I bet like, oh, that's probably like chocolate ice cream.
If you're into like discipline and you're into the idea of that anticipation and that fear is so hard to come up with, because you have to trust the person you're doing something with so much in order to do it. It's this interesting balance of like, I want to be nervous and afraid, but I don't want to be nervous and afraid because I want to know that you're not going to hurt me. And so being able to sort of like manufacture that nervous energy is very fun.
Best scene in a movie, worst scene in a movie?
Favorite scene is Blue Hawaii, without a doubt. My personal favorite scene. I think it's the best scene. I think it's like, if somebody wants to understand a spanking fetishist that has a discipline kink in particularly people that have a bit of a rescue-y fetish, the spanking scene in Blue Hawaii with Elvis is so good. Sorry, I just did those long S's, but it is my absolute favorite. I adore that scene. I watched that scene over and over and over again as a child. I could do it from memory. It's so good. The spanking's decent. It's still not great, but that's not the point. The point is the scene. He rescues her, and then she says nobody cares about her, and then he says she needs a spanking. He's like, you know what, you need a good old-fashioned spanking. And she says, maybe I do. No one ever cared enough about me, even for that. And then he goes, if that'll show you somebody does care. And then he pulls her over his knee and spanks her. And it's so hot. Worst, man, there's a lot of candidates for that one. I don't know if I can think of a word. Anything where somebody looks like they're taking a belt to somebody and it's going on their back. That upsets me. The other most famous spanking scene in a movie is McClintock.
That's one of my favorite movies. And when you were talking about Blue Hawaii, and I was always like, oh, I remember McClintock. I would think that would get people fired up.
So McClintock is the most famous. It's like McClintock and then Blue Hawaii. There's 2 spankings in McClintock, actually, which is wild. I love that you have even seen this movie. The idea that somebody that's not into spanking has seen McClintock is wild to me.
It's a good movie. It's a
classic. Yeah. It's a John Wayne classic. I love the first spanking in McClintock. There's a scene where the girl tries to get John Wayne to shoot her boyfriend. She's like, shoot him, daddy, shoot him. Because he
it's his daughter, right?
Yeah, it's John Wayne's daughter. And she tries to get John Wayne to shoot her fiance because she's in a fight with him and she's being brat. And then he fake shoots him with a starter pistol. And then the boyfriend's horrified. And he's like, I'm going to and so then he spanks her and John Wayne hands him a coal shovel to paddle her with. Love that scene. Then he chases Catherine O'Hara through the town. That's the scene you're thinking of, the very famous one.
It's his wife, and
it's Taming of the Shrew. Yeah, so it's a retelling of Taming of the Shrew. And so he chases her through the town. She falls into a water trough, and then he spanks her in front of the whole town. But he uses somebody hands him a coal shovel, and it makes this they put in this ridiculous boom, boom noise on top of it that for me kind of ruins it. But for a lot of people, McClintock is their favorite.
That's pretty much all the questions I got. What's kind of coming up next for you? How can people learn more, get a hold of you, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So if you're interested in learning more about me, just my background or interested in a session, then my website is misskellymay.com. And you can find out stuff there. And then the other thing is I run the Texas All-State Spanking Party, which is coming up in the beginning of June. It's the largest spanking party in the U.S. And it's 5 days of spanking shenanigans and fun. So that is TexasAllStateSpankingParty.com. There's links on my website as well. And then if people just want to follow more of me, or see a bunch of naked pictures of me, I have an OnlyFans under Princess Kelley.